All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're taking a super simple, exam-focused approach to core computer hardware for the CompTIA A Core 1 exam. Whether you're totally new to IT or you're just here to brush up, we're going to build our understanding from the ground up by looking at exactly what happens inside the box.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover power and motherboards, CPUs and cooling, RAM and memory types, storage and RAID, expansion and PCE, and then we'll wrap it all up with the rapid exam review.
Section 1. Power and Motherboards. We're going to look at this by solving a classic no power issue help desk ticket. So to solve a power issue, we really have to look at the main communication hub of the whole computer, the motherboard. Take a look at the CPU socket on the left. That's literally where the computer's brain sits. And on the right, those are the critical power supply connectors that feed electricity from the wall into the entire system.
What's actually really interesting here is exactly how that power is divided up. For the exam, you absolutely have to memorize that the massive 24-pin ATX connector runs the main board, powering things like your RAM and expansion slots. But the CPU, it's hungry. It needs its own dedicated juice, which comes from the 4-pin or 8-pin CPU power connector. You might also hear it called the EATX-12V. Now, here's a huge exam trap for you. Do not confuse this 8-pin CPU connector with the 8-pin PCIe connector that's used for graphics cards. Always check the label.
Now, when we talk about the power supply unit, or PSU, its wattage rating is just the absolute maximum amount of power it can pump out under 100% load. But hey, power isn't just coming from the wall outlet. Have you ever dealt with a PC that just constantly forgets what time it is? It is super frustrating, but the fix is incredibly simple. Our memory trick here is check the coin. It is almost always a dead CR2032 CMOS battery on the motherboard. It looks just like a shiny coin. This little battery is what keeps the BIOS or UEFI firmware settings alive, even when the PC is totally unplugged.
Moving on to Section 2, CPUs and cooling systems. We'll frame this around handling a workstation upgrade request.
If a user comes to you needing a faster workstation, we're looking straight at the central processing unit. The CPU is the computer's brain, and we measure its speed in gigahertz. To understand sockets, just remember this. Intel largely uses LGA, or land grid array. That means the delicate little pins are down inside the motherboard socket. AMD, on the other hand, often uses PGA, or pin grid array, where the pins are actually on the CPU chip itself. And because these chips are working so incredibly hard, they get hot. Like dangerously hot. That brings us to TDP, or thermal design power. This is simply the heat wattage that the cooling system has to dissipate. And the absolute key to cooling? Thermal paste. The CompTIA exam loves to test this. You need thermal paste to seal the tiny microscopic gaps between the CPU and the metal heatsink so the heat can actually transfer effectively.
All right, Section 3, RAM and memory types. We're going to look at this by fulfilling a laptop needs RAM upgrade ticket.
So the crucial point here is understanding the computer's short-term working memory, which we call RAM. Desktops use DIMMs. Those are the longer sticks. Laptops use SODIMMs. The memory trick here is super easy. SODIMM stands for small outline, which makes perfect sense because it has to fit nicely into a small laptop chassis. A quick word of warning, never try to force a desktop DIMM into a laptop. It won't fit, and you will literally just end up snapping some very expensive hardware. And this brings us to one of the absolute biggest CompTIA exam traps, pin counts. You literally just have to commit these to memory. DDR3 desktops use 240 pins, while DDR4 and DDR5 both use 288 pins. But wait a second, if they both have 288 pins, does that mean they're compatible? Absolutely not. They use differently placed center notches to physically stop you from plugging the wrong generation of RAM into the wrong motherboard. For laptops, you need to memorize that a DDR4 SODIMM has 260 pins.
Let's jump into Section 4, Storage Drives and RAID. We'll be fixing a failed drive and an SSD replacement ticket.
Long-term storage is where all your files live permanently. Hard disk drives, or HDDs, use slow magnetic spinning platters. Solid-state drives, or SSDs, on the other hand, use incredibly fast flash memory with absolutely zero moving parts. Now, the standard connection interface for older SSDs and HDDs is SATA, which uses a 7-pin data cable and a 15-pin power cable. But most modern PCs, they use M.2 drives. The big exam trick here is knowing that M2 is just a physical shape. It's a tiny stack that plugs flat right into the motherboard. NVMe, however, is the blazing fast language or protocol that the best M.2 SSDs speak over the PCIe bus. Do not confuse the physical shape with the speed protocol.
But what happens when a drive completely dies? Well, that is where RAID comes in. RAID stands for Redundant Array of Independent Disks. When a user panics over a failed drive, a properly configured RAID array is exactly what keeps the business running without catastrophic data loss.
Notice how we build this fault tolerance. With RAID 5, it requires a minimum of 3 drives and uses something called parity to magically reconstruct data if one drive fails. Then we have RAID 10, which needs at least 4 drives. It's a hybrid setup that combines mirroring, which is copying data exactly, with striping, making it highly redundant and very fast.
So for the exam, you need to memorize these 4. And here is your ultimate memory trick. RAID 0 gives you 0 data back if a single drive fails. Yes, it's fast, but it has absolutely no fault tolerance. Mark my words, that is the most common exam trap that will try to catch you on. Section 5. Expansion cards and PCIe. Let's resolve a ticket where a user complains their PC is too slow for video editing, meaning we definitely need to add a dedicated graphics processing unit, or GPU.
To add functionality that just isn't built into the motherboard, we use expansion slots. Primarily, we're talking about PCIe or PCI Express. Video cards use the longest and fastest slot, which is PCI X16. You absolutely must memorize that beefy PCIe graphics cards draw a ton of power, so they often require their own dedicated 6-pin or 8-pin PCIe power cables routed directly from the power supply. This is completely separate from the motherboard's main power.
Section 6. Rapid Exam Review. Top facts and simulated questions.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today. Here is your ultimate rapid review checklist. Seriously, you might want to pause the explainer right here if you need to. From pin counts to power connectors, these are the concepts that separate the novices from the certified pros. Let's test this knowledge right now with a quick lightning round of simulated questions. First question. Read it carefully here. It's specifically asking about pins located in the socket. Applying what we just learned, the answer is LGA, or Land Grid Array. Remember, PGA, or Pin Grid Array, puts those fragile copper pins directly on the CPU itself.
Next up, think about the constraints they're giving you: fault tolerance and maximum storage. The answer is RAID 5. Because it uses parity, you only lose the storage capacity of exactly 1 drive to hold the recovery data. If you went with RAID 1 or RAID 10, those rely on mirroring, which literally cuts your total usable storage space directly in half. Okay, last question. What's the keyword here? It's laptop. Remember our memory trick from earlier? Laptops use small outline, or SODIMM memory. Therefore, you should be looking for the 260-pin answer for DDR4 or the 204-pin answer for DDR3. Do not fall for the 288-pin desktop trap. And there you have it, the anatomy of a PC from ticket to fix. Understanding the why behind the hardware makes memorizing all these facts so much easier. Keep studying those pin counts, stay curious, and ask yourself, what complex system will you demystify next to totally crush your goals? Good luck on your exam.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Good luck with your CompTIA A Core 1 exam.